This morning we're going to work on some close reading about Halloween, okay? You have an article in front of you right now, but before we begin reading, let's go over what do you already know about close reading. Remember, you can use this up here to help you think about what you already know. What do you know about close reading? Patricia? What I heard her say is that you have to read carefully. When I read carefully as a reader, sometimes that means I read a little bit slowly, and that's okay. When I read carefully, sometimes I read slowly. When I read slowly, my brain has time to think, and that is so important. That's what good readers do. If you read carefully, which sometimes means a little bit more slowly, my brain has time to think about what I'm reading. When I can think about what I read, then I can annotate my thinking. What does annotate mean? If I'm annotating my thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? Go ahead.
Working your brain.
Say it again.
Working your brain.
I am. My brain is working hard to think about what I'm reading. You're so right. And when my brain is thinking about what I'm reading, what can I do to show that? How do you know that I show what I'm thinking? Go ahead.
You like write stuff like tracks.
Good. I can write tracks of my thinking. And that's what, remember when I was saying sometimes when it snows, you know an animal has been outside because you can see their what?
Tracks.
You can see their tracks. When it rains and you're maybe taking a walk outside and you see animal prints, what are those? Tracks. So when you see tracks on the ground, maybe footprints, maybe animal prints, you know that an animal has been there, right? How do I know that? Because I see its tracks. I know that you have been reading and thinking about what you're reading when I can see your tracks. So these codes, I like to call them my secret codes of annotation. These codes are your footprints. I know that you have been there thinking about what you're reading when I see your footprints behind. What are some of your footprints that we like to do? What are some of your tracks that you know? What could you show me? Go ahead. I'm going to read this next sentence to you, and your job is to discuss this sentence with your table, okay? I want you to share your thinking. Some of you might have something that you already knew. You'd give it a check mark. Some of you may learn something new in this new sentence, okay? So your job is to listen to the sentence, then you're going to discuss any thinking, and then annotate your thinking, mark it down. Do you see where this sentence begins? Okay, this is where I'm going to start. That long ago, many people still believed that ghosts and witches would play tricks on them during their festival. All right, can somebody hear the sentence again? And then I need you to write down any thoughts that you have. Remember to use your annotation bookmark, okay? Who's can be the leader at this table and read that sentence? All right, Francisco, go ahead. Okay, now, does anybody have any thoughts? When you're hearing that sentence, what is your brain thinking when you hear that? Many people believed that ghosts and witches would play tricks on them. What do you think? You should. Let's underline ghosts and witches. Find the word ghosts and witches. Good job, ghosts and witches. And now, like I did, you know how I wrote myself a note over here? You can do that too. Next door over here, write down your thought that you said. What did you say again for your table members?
Ghosts and witches are real. They're like just made up monsters.
Good. So now we know that ghosts and witches aren't real. Go ahead and write that down next door. Great thinking. If you have something different, because remember, your thoughts are different than your neighbor's thoughts. If you have something else that you want to annotate with that sentence, that's great. Okay? Let me give you a minute or two. Go ahead and annotate those sentences right there. And then we're going to share aloud our thinking. If you want, if you're not, maybe you're stuck, you don't have anything, maybe talk with your neighbors. Oftentimes when I talk with my neighbors, I learn even more, and that way I can share my thinking, and my neighbor has shared their thinking with me.
Candy, so the witches and the ghosts could behave in the festival. And the witches and the ghosts, they've done something bad. That's
And then once you finish writing, I don't want him to forget it.
they will do what they want, and they will
Treats to the ghosts and witches so they would behave during the festival. What did that make you think?
They won't bother the villagers.
Good job. Can I write that for you? They won't bother the villagers is what you said. Who's the they? They won't bother. Good. They won't bother the ghosts and witches won't bother the villagers. Good. When I was going around table to table, the most common thought that you had was, let me squeeze over here. When I see this, they offered the treats to the ghosts and witches, so the ghosts and witches would behave during the festival. Let me say it nice and loud. You're thinking, Xavier. Such good thinking. When he goes back to the text, he's synthesizing this information. He's reading what the author wrote and then thinking about it and using his own information, and then he can say it back in his own words. Xavier, when you do close reading like this, that's such hard thinking. He's reading, thinking about what the author is saying, and then he can say it back in his own words. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to give you time to reread with your neighbors. If you reread what the author wrote and your annotations, you'll find the answers, okay? Here we go. My first question. Why do the villagers want the ghosts and witches to leave them alone? I see some of you have your hands in the air. Fabulous. What I want you to do is work with your table members, okay? Can we work on having discussions with each other? Why do you think the ghosts, let me say it again. Why do you think the villagers want the ghosts and witches to leave them alone? Go ahead, talk with your group.
I think the villagers want the ghosts and witches to leave them alone because maybe they'll satisfy.
What in here made you think that? That's it. When I asked you what made you think that, you went back to the sentence that said Halloween started hundreds of years ago as a serious festival. When you go back to the text and I ask that question, what made you think that? That means, what in this passage made you think that answer? Okay? I like when you go back to the text to find your answer. 3, 2. The question I'm going to ask you, this is the last question. How are you similar to the ghosts and witches? This is is a very tough question. How are you, as someone who celebrates Halloween, how are you similar to the ghosts and witches in this passage? Remember, the ghosts and witches would get treats if you don't play tricks. Talk to your neighbor.
Really similar because they were and ghosts and witches get treats if they behave themselves. And we both get candy. We both get treats from ghosts and witches. I know something. We both like candy because the witches and ghosts like candy, and we like to get candy too.
What I want you to remember is that when we do some close reading, which means I read carefully, sometimes that means a little bit slowly, so that my brain can start thinking about what I'm reading. When your brain can think, you know a lot of codes that you can do to show your thinking. Leave your footprints behind for us to read, okay? All right, good job. I'd like you to put these in your folder